During a sweltering August day in 2008, a horrific incident occurred in an upscale Atlanta suburb, shattering the peace of a seemingly idyllic community. The Davis family's residence, situated among the area's impressive homes and leafy boulevards, became the epicenter of a shocking event. This prosperous neighborhood, known for its tight-knit atmosphere and luxurious properties, was unprepared for the turmoil about to unfold. Within the walls of one of these elegant houses, the intricate relationships between Jamar Davis, his spouse Alexia, and her son from a previous marriage, Laken, collided in an unexpected and devastating manner. The events of that fateful afternoon would not only rock the local residents, but also rip apart the fabric of the Davis family. As investigators delved deeper, they uncovered a web of hidden tensions and conflicts that had been simmering beneath the surface of this outwardly perfect household. At 56, Jamar appeared to embody success. The youngest of 3 children from a blue-collar Atlanta family, he displayed intelligence and determination early on. These traits propelled his later achievements. After completing high school in 1970, Jamar pursued higher education at Georgia State University, graduating with a business administration degree. Initially employed in retail, Jamar quickly advanced his career. He later established Davis's Tools and More, a chain of hardware stores. These establishments gained popularity for their extensive product range and exceptional service. By the turn of the millennium, Jamar had grown his enterprise to 10 stores throughout Georgia, earning him recognition as both a savvy and charitable entrepreneur. Despite his humble beginnings, Jamar's journey from a working-class background to a respected business owner seemed to exemplify the classic rags-to-riches story. His ascent in the business world, coupled with his community involvement, painted a picture of a self-made man who had achieved considerable success through hard work and business acumen. Jamar Davis was a prominent figure in Atlanta's social and business circles. His involvement in local charitable activities, including organizing fundraisers and making donations, was well known. People were drawn to his friendly demeanor and welcoming smile. Despite his financial success, Jamar remained down-to-earth, often assisting those less fortunate. However, unknown to most, he privately battled personal issues. At 54, Alexia Davis exuded elegance and kindness. Hailing from Savannah, she grew up in a tight-knit, large family that emphasized education and community involvement. Following her graduation from Spelman College in 1976 with an education degree, Alexia returned to her hometown to teach high school. Her commitment to her students was remarkable. Alexia's nurturing approach and extra efforts to ensure student success were widely recognized. She taught English at a local high school for over 20 years before meeting Jamar. In 2001, a chance encounter at a Savannah charity event brought Alexia and Jamar together. Their shared interest in philanthropy sparked a connection. Alexia was impressed by Jamar's charisma and dedication to community service. After a brief courtship, they married in 2002. Alexia relocated to Atlanta with her young son Laken to begin a new chapter with Jamar. Jamar Davis took to his stepfather role with enthusiasm. Though childless himself, he eagerly embraced the responsibility of raising Laken. At first, Laken was wary of Jamar, unsure about this new presence in his life. However, Jamar's unwavering support and genuine interest in Laken's welfare gradually overcame these reservations. Jamar evolved into more than just a stepfather, becoming a mentor and friend to Laken, assisting with his studies and fostering his interests. Their newly formed family unit thrived, presenting an image of contentment and success to outsiders. Alexia's son, Laken, 21, showed great promise. Born in Savannah in 1987, Laken had always exhibited intelligence and inquisitiveness. His early childhood was affected by a difficult relationship with his absent biological father, who had departed when Laken was only 5. This absence created a gap in Laken's life that was later filled by Jamar's arrival. Academically gifted, Laken stood out among his peers. His high school years saw him develop a keen interest in engineering, leading him to pursue mechanical engineering at Georgia Tech. His innovative thinking and adept problem-solving skills frequently drew praise from his professors. Laken wasn't just recognized for his academic success. He was also a skilled athlete, having joined the high school wrestling team. His hard work paid off quickly, and he rose to become one of the top wrestlers in his division. Even after moving on to college, Laken continued to excel, earning multiple accolades and gaining respect from his teammates. His tall, muscular frame reflected the years of dedication and discipline he had poured into the sport. Despite all his achievements, Laken stayed grounded and kind. He remained close with his mother, often turning to her for advice. Over the years, his connection with Jamar deepened, as Jamar helped guide Laken not only in school but also in life. From the outside, Laken seemed to have everything: a bright future, a loving family, and a sharp intellect. Yet beneath the surface, the dynamics within the Davis family were far more complicated than they seemed. Jamar Davis's transition into adulthood came with its share of challenges. As a teenager, he faced a period of deep confusion and curiosity surrounding his sexuality. Growing up in Atlanta during the late 1960s and early 1970s, rigid societal norms left little room for anything outside the accepted standard. Still, Jamar found himself attracted to other boys, something he couldn't fully comprehend or openly admit. At the age of 17, during the summer before his senior year of high school, Jamar had his first and only encounter with another boy. The experience left him both exhilarated and terrified. The boy was a close friend, someone Jamar trusted implicitly, which made the betrayal of his own emotions feel even more profound. They had shared a moment of intense connection, something that went beyond the physical, yet it was fraught with a sense of danger and shame. When it was over, both boys swore never to speak of it again, and Jamar buried the memory deep within himself, vowing to never let those feelings resurface. For years, Jamar kept that side of himself buried deep. He poured all his energy into his studies and later into building a career, focusing on the life he was expected to live, a life that included running a successful business, marrying a beautiful wife, and starting a family. The shame and fear from his teenage encounter kept him committed to this path. He convinced himself it was just a phase, a brief mistake. From the outside, Jamar's life looked like the perfect picture of traditional success, and any lingering doubts were pushed far into the background. But as the years passed, those hidden feelings started to resurface. By 2005, Jamar was at the peak of his career. His hardware store chain had spread across Georgia, earning him a reputation as a sharp and well-respected businessman. Yet with every milestone he reached, the cracks in the life he'd built began to show. In social settings with male friends and colleagues, Jamar felt an undeniable pull toward them, something he could no longer ignore. It began with harmless moments, a look that lingered too long, a handshake that felt like it lasted a second longer than necessary. But even these subtle signs were enough to reignite desires he had kept locked away for decades. These feelings deeply troubled him. He couldn't make sense of how the man he'd worked so hard to become could coexist with these desires that now surfaced. The guilt weighed on him heavily, but at the same time, the excitement was undeniable. Caught in a dangerous spiral of shame and thrill, Jamar found himself secretly exploring these long-repressed urges, each moment feeding into the next, pulling him deeper into conflict. Jamar started looking for ways to meet other men, using his business trips as a cover. In cities far from home, where nobody knew him or his reputation, he let himself indulge in the fantasies he had hidden for years. He began visiting bars and clubs known for their discretion, places where he could meet men like himself, men living double lives. These encounters filled him with both excitement and fear. Jamar knew he was putting everything at risk, his marriage, career, and the image he had worked so hard to create, but the temptation was impossible to resist. As these secret liaisons became more frequent, it grew harder for Jamar to keep up the appearance of the perfect husband. He felt more and more distant from Alexia, their once close relationship now strained under the weight of his lies. The guilt of betraying her and the life they had built together ate at him, but the desire was too strong to push aside. Things took an even darker turn when Laken, Alexia's son from her previous marriage, began growing into adulthood. As Laken neared his early 20s, Jamar couldn't help but notice the young man's transformation into a confident, attractive adult. Laken's athletic build, strengthened by years of wrestling, only added to the pull. Jamar found himself increasingly drawn to Laken in ways that horrified him. The young man's presence stirred feelings Jamar had never expected to confront again, especially not like this. The internal conflict Jamar faced was now more intense than ever. Not only was he struggling with his reawakened attraction to men, but he was also grappling with the inappropriate and dangerous feelings he harbored for his stepson. Jamar's attempts to suppress these desires only seemed to intensify them. The more he tried to distance himself emotionally and mentally from Laken, the more he found himself drawn to the young man. Every interaction, every casual conversation or shared meal became a minefield of suppressed longing and guilt. Jamar was acutely aware of the inappropriateness of his feelings, but he couldn't help the way his gaze lingered a bit too long on Laken or how his heart raced when they were alone. To cope with these overwhelming emotions, Jamar began to distance himself further from Alexia, immersing himself even more in his business and his clandestine affairs. He convinced himself that his marriage was still strong, that he could keep his double life hidden from everyone, especially from his family. He rationalized that these secret encounters with other men were a way to satiate his desires without endangering his marriage or the complicated, fragile relationship he had with Laken. The more Jamar gave into his secret meetings, the further he drifted from the person he used to be. The life he had so carefully built was starting to collapse under the weight of his deception. While the guilt from betraying Alexia was overwhelming, the shame he felt over his growing attraction to Laken was unbearable. He was living two lives, one safe, respectable, and expected, the other dangerous, thrilling, and forbidden. Jamar's hidden life created a deep internal divide, one that threatened to swallow everything he had worked for. His feelings for Laken were like a ticking bomb, ready to go off and destroy not only his life but also the lives of those he cared about. Yet despite the enormous risk, he couldn't stop himself from sinking deeper into this dark side of himself. The more he tried to push his desires down, the stronger they seemed to grow, and he felt powerless to control it. As Laken continued to evolve into his own person, Jamar's emotions grew even more tangled. He found himself trapped in a web of his own making, with every move tightening the noose, leaving him more entangled in the mess he had created. As Laken Banks entered college, he began to confront a tangled web of emotions and desires, awakening parts of himself that had long been buried. His path of self-discovery took a major turn when he decided to join the wrestling team at Georgia Tech, a choice that would shape his experiences in ways he never saw coming. Wrestling quickly became a passion for Laken, not just for the competitive aspect, but also for the bond it built among the team. He loved the physical intensity of the sport, the way his body clashed with others in a battle that required both brute force and sharp strategy. But as he wrestled his opponents on the mat, Laken became more aware of the tactile nature of the sport. The sensation of his skin brushing against his teammates during these encounters started to stir a new kind of thrill within him, one he had never acknowledged before. In the locker room, the air was thick with testosterone and camaraderie. As he showered beside his teammates, Laken found his eyes wandering, lingering a little too long on the bodies of the other guys. He felt a surge of excitement mixed with guilt as he came to terms with an attraction he had kept hidden. The realization that he was drawn to his male teammates sent a wave of confusion through him, forcing him to question the traditional views he'd been raised with and his understanding of his own identity as a straight man. Laken frequently drifted into deep thought, wrestling with his emotions as he interacted with his friends. He appreciated the camaraderie of the team and valued the connections he had built, but he couldn't ignore the growing awareness of his attraction to some of the guys. Despite feeling flickers of curiosity and desire, he had never acted on these emotions. Before his involvement with Jamar, Laken had always kept his distance, treading carefully as he tried to navigate the complicated terrain of his evolving sexuality. As Laken got older, his admiration for Jamar grew in ways he hadn't expected. What started as a simple respect for his stepfather slowly evolved into something more complex. Jamar had always been a constant in Laken's life, providing guidance, support, and setting an example of what it meant to be a strong, successful man. This connection, paired with unresolved issues between Laken and his biological father, created a unique bond between them. On Jamar's side, he was blindsided by the feelings he was developing for Laken. He had always seen himself as a traditional man, loyal to his family and committed to his role as husband and stepfather. But the desires he had long buried began to surface again, and he found himself increasingly drawn to Laken. The attraction wasn't just physical. It was deeply emotional, rooted in the close bond they had built over the years. The shift happened when Laken hit his early 20s, moving from adolescence into adulthood. As he grew more self-assured and independent, the dynamic between him and Jamar started to change. Laken began seeing Jamar not just as a father figure, but as a man with his own vulnerabilities and complexities. This new understanding left Laken feeling confused and curious, which soon blossomed into deeper feelings of affection. Their relationship took a secretive, romantic turn, filled with stolen glances, lingering touches, and silent exchanges that spoke louder than words. Both men understood the forbidden nature of their connection, and the weight of guilt was heavy on them. But the strength of their emotions made walking away impossible. Jamar's internal struggle was further complicated by the fact that his attraction to men was not limited to Laken. Even as he grew closer to his stepson, Jamar continued to seek out secret encounters with other men, something Laken was unaware of. These clandestine meetings were a way for Jamar to explore the desires he had kept hidden for so long, but they also left him feeling more conflicted than ever. Laken, oblivious to Jamar's secret affairs, stayed entirely focused on their relationship. He found himself overwhelmed by a mix of emotions: excitement, guilt, love, and fear, each amplified by the secrecy of their connection. The forbidden nature of their bond only intensified its grip, creating a force between them that neither could easily escape. As their relationship deepened, the stakes became higher. Jamar's fear of losing everything he had built, his family, reputation, and business, collided with his need to explore the part of himself he had kept hidden for years. Juggling this double life became harder, and the cracks in the facade he'd created began to show. Laken, meanwhile, was wrestling with his own emotional turmoil. His love for his mother ran deep, and he knew that if she ever discovered the truth, it would shatter her. Yet he couldn't ignore his feelings for Jamar, which grew stronger every day. The burden of their secret weighed heavily on him, leaving him caught between his love for Jamar and his loyalty to Alexia. Their situation became even more complicated because they were living under the same roof. The constant closeness made it nearly impossible to keep up the appearance of a normal family, and the tension between them grew noticeable. They had to be cautious not to let their emotions slip, especially around Alexia, who was becoming more suspicious of the changes in their behavior. Over time, the weight of the secret relationship between Jamar and Laken began to take its toll. The initial thrill was replaced by overwhelming guilt and fear. Laken, who had once been close to his mother, started pulling away, consumed by the shame of his betrayal. He couldn't face her, knowing what he was hiding. Jamar, also trapped in his conflicting emotions, wrestled with his love for Alexia while grappling with the deep feelings he had for Laken. The inner struggle made him more anxious and irritable. Alexia started picking up on the changes, the awkward silences, the evasive responses, and the rising tension in the house. Though she couldn't identify the cause, her suspicions grew. The once warm, loving home had turned cold, filled with unease. Jamar's secret affairs with other men only added to the stress, worsening his guilt and confusion. The pressure of maintaining a double life wore him down, leading to sleepless nights and constant worry. Laken, too, became consumed by fear that their secret would come out, affecting his studies and straining his other relationships. On August 17, 2008, the heat and humidity clung to the air in Atlanta. Alexia had spent the morning at work, completely unaware of the tragedy about to strike her life. When she returned home in the early afternoon, she was greeted by an unsettling silence. Jamar, who was supposed to be off work, was nowhere to be seen. She called out for him, but the house remained eerily quiet. Her concern grew as she started searching room by room. When she reached the basement, where Jamar often spent his time, the horrifying reality hit her. Jamar lay face down in a pool of blood. Overcome with panic, Alexia rushed to his side, struggling to make sense of what she was seeing. It was obvious he had been dead for several hours. Her screams echoed through the neighborhood, drawing the attention of their neighbor, Tom Henderson, who hurried over. Tom immediately called 911, and soon the once quiet street was swarmed by the sounds of sirens. The police arrived quickly, securing the crime scene as paramedics confirmed Jamar was dead. Detective John Richards, a veteran in homicide investigations, took charge while officers began questioning both Alexia and Tom. Alexia, still in shock, recounted her day, explaining how she had come home to find Jamar's body. Tom told the officers he had heard Alexia's screams and rushed over to find her beside her husband's lifeless body. As Detective Richards examined the basement, he noticed signs of a struggle, but no obvious indication of forced entry. Given the circumstances, Alexia was taken to the station for further questioning. Despite being emotionally shaken, her account of the day was clear. She stated that she had been at work all morning, and after verifying her cell phone location and checking her whereabouts, the police confirmed her alibi. With her alibi verified, Alexia was released, but the investigation was far from wrapped up. Detectives combed through Jamar's phone records, discovering a call made that morning to his business partner, Robert Mitchell. Brought in for questioning, Mitchell admitted he had met Jamar that morning to discuss business, but claimed he left soon after. His alibi didn't hold up well, so the police took a DNA sample and kept him under suspicion, considering financial motives as a potential angle. As the investigation unfolded, detectives dug deeper into Jamar's private life and uncovered a shocking trail of messages and social media exchanges. They revealed that Jamar had been involved in multiple secret relationships with men. Even more startling was the discovery that one of those affairs was with his stepson, Laken. Laken was soon brought in for questioning. Faced with undeniable evidence of his affair with Jamar, he reluctantly admitted to the relationship but fiercely denied having anything to do with Jamar's murder. His alibi was shaky at best, and with the mounting evidence, Laken quickly became the primary suspect. During a meticulous search of the basement, investigators found hidden surveillance cameras. The footage uncovered a chilling sequence of events. It showed that Robert Mitchell had indeed visited Jamar that morning, where they engaged in a tense conversation before Mitchell left. 2 hours later, Laken arrived in the basement, where he discovered Jamar's infidelity with other men. What began as a heated argument spiraled into violence, and the footage captured Laken fatally attacking Jamar before fleeing the scene. Confronted with the overwhelming evidence, Laken finally broke down and admitted to the crime. He explained that it was a moment of uncontrollable rage fueled by betrayal and heartbreak. Alexia, upon learning the truth, was shattered, unable to reconcile the horror of the situation with the family she thought she had known. With the surveillance footage proving his involvement, Laken had no choice but to confess. He revealed that his emotions had taken over, and in a moment of fury, he committed the murder. The feelings of betrayal had pushed him past the breaking point. The trial took place on November 10, 2008. Laken pleaded guilty to manslaughter, citing emotional distress and an overwhelming loss of control as key factors. The courtroom was tense as both sides presented their arguments. The judge, after considering the circumstances, sentenced Laken to 15 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 10 years. The sentencing brought an end to a tragic chapter for the Davis family. Alexia was left to pick up the pieces of her life, grieving the loss of her husband and facing the reality of her son's imprisonment. The community, once tight-knit, was left stunned as they tried to come to terms with the dark secrets that had been lurking just beneath the surface.